let's begin with you. Can you just give us a sense of what the current organization that you're leading, what is its role, and how does it fit into India's offshore wind plans? How was it conceptualized, and what is the primary role and objective?
Yeah, certainly. The Center of Excellence for Offshore Wind and Renewable Energy is an organization that's created in collaboration between the Danish government and the Indian government. So it's right now it's just a virtual center with only me participating, but we are planning on expanding that into a physical center where it's supposed to be placed under NIVE in Chennai. And the aim for the center is to help develop mainly offshore wind, but also expanding into other renewable energies in India. And the way we do that is by creating reports and so on, using the knowledge we have from Denmark, and we are planning also to expand into other countries in Europe. We are collaborating with the EU Commission as well in order to bring the knowledge from Europe and so on to India, and then put it into an Indian context, so it will help developers in India to make it easier for them basically to set up their projects.
Right. So basically, it's a sort of a joint venture between MNRE and Danish Energy Agency.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay. Kuldeep, I'll come to you. What has GIZ been doing, to promote offshore wind in the country, and what has been your personal experience in this space before we begin the actual discussion for today? Yes.
Sure, Khushbu. First of all, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here. From GIZ, I'm not sure if you are aware what GIZ is. It's a bilateral cooperation between Government of Germany and Government of India. GIZ has been working in India since last 60 years, and some very recent initiatives, which have helped energy transition initiatives in India include the 2022 announcement of Green and Sustainable Development Partnership. So this was announced by both the heads of the countries in 2022. Last year at RE Invest, we had a big German delegation coming to India, and the platform project, we call it platform, it's an investment platform for facilitation of investments into renewable energies, where we have experts, or let's say investors from the German side, European side, also IEA and World Bank and others participating under the platform. And the key objective of the platform is to further support investments into the renewable energy space in India. Now, coming to the offshore wind topic, this is something very new for us, specifically GIZ. We have just recently started a new bilateral program with MNRE, and the program focuses on exactly similar objectives as Jesper has just mentioned. So we are also trying to promote offshore wind in India by collaborating with the German, European companies, bringing the knowledge and expertise from Germany, Europe to India, focusing on further research and development, looking at tenders, and also, with the EU delegation in India, we are also setting up a new initiative where we'll be working very closely with also Danish Energy Agency, and further strengthening the Center of Excellence for Offshore Wind. So that's the brief background, where GIZ is kind of trying to bring the inputs. Now, the challenges or some issues that we have seen recently in our stakeholder discussions with, let's say, state of Gujarat and also state of Tamil Nadu, they are expecting that the offshore wind LCOE could be in the range of 4.5 to 5 rupees per unit. They are ready to sign PPAs. But as we know, offshore wind, it's expensive. It's expensive for, because it's unlike any other wind technology. It needs totally different kind of supply chain. It needs different kind of labor. It needs different kind of grid integration network infrastructure. So it's complex, and the complexities bring the additional costs. And the governments are expecting that the LCOEs can be lower and we can sign the PPAs. Now on the other side, on the let's
Kuldeep, if I
say
can stop
developer
here,
side, yeah.
if I can stop here, we'll talk about cost and all of those things further during the discussion. Mr. Joshi, you're right on time. We've just heard their introductions. And if I can come to you now, sir, and you can let us know what ONGC Green is planning in offshore wind and overall renewable energy. I know you've been part of this panel, I think, last year and last year also, but good to hear again.
See, ONGC, as you know, is a ENP player and we have presence in offshore. We feel that we have those capacity and capability to execute mega projects. So we are very much interested in offshore wind since very beginning. We formed a joint venture with NTPC to take up offshore wind projects. Somewhere in 2020, we conducted one study to find out the feasibility of projects in Tamil Nadu as well as in Gujarat. Again, when the SECI tender came out, we conducted another study to find out. But there are challenges and there are hurdles which need to be resolved first, then only we can move. You know, tomorrow is the due date for opening of the SECI tender for 500 megawatt in Gujarat. But to my understanding, there are no bids, there are no takers for that. So we need to deeply analyze why it is happening so. From our side, we always requested government to give us opportunity to put up one pilot plant so that we can show and demonstrate that offshore wind is possible in India. But somehow, policy and regulations, which play an important role, they somehow come in between. So we have to analyze the things from many angles. So definitely, ONGC, being an offshore player, is always interested. We are forthcoming, but we need some privilege because the sector is not picking up here. And we need to have some supports which we'll discuss in the total panel discussion.
Right. Thank you, sir. Jesper, I'll come to you. We discussed some of this yesterday also, but just to reiterate it for the audience that was not there, what is the potential that India is looking at in terms of offshore wind? And what have been the initial developments in terms of progress for tapping that potential till now?
Yeah, like EU has actually done a study on this together with the MNRE and NIVE, where they looked into like the entire coastline of India and what they saw and what we've also then expanded on at the Center of Excellence with further marine spatial planning projects is that we see a capacity of like around 70 gigawatts should be feasible. So it is a large number. It's much more than what's already installed in Europe, where there is a large industry for this already. And if we even look at like a regional perspective of Southeast Asia, then like we get into like some very large numbers that should be able to like bring some industry or something like that to the region. But yeah, it is a huge potential where we also see that if there's already capacity for onshore production here and so on. So there are some transferable skills that you can do into the offshore. Like the things are much larger and so on, but the overall like technology behind is the same. So there should be some possibilities to kind of do this skill transfer from the offshore production in Europe to India fairly easily, in my opinion at least. So I see a large potential, definitely.
Right. Kuldeep, I'll come to you now. You started talking about costs and tariffs when I sort of cut you off. But can you tell us what is the expected capital cost for offshore wind in India at the moment and the expected tariff range if we have that? You spoke about LCOE and what is the differential between onshore wind and offshore wind? And finally, how does that compare with the kind of tariffs that we are seeing in maybe more evolved markets like the UK or Denmark or Germany or Netherlands?
Sure. Coming to the cost of offshore wind per megawatt in India, it would be in the range from 18 to 20 crore rupees per megawatt. And, comparing to the onshore wind is somewhere roughly around 6 to 7, maybe 8 crores per megawatt. And, the tariffs that we are looking at, the LCOE would be in the range 12 to 14 rupees per unit for offshore wind. And onshore wind, you see what's the tariffs are coming in, and on top plus FDRE, RTC, combining with solar and storage, it's feasible, and 4.5 rupees is something, even lower than that, those are the kind of tariffs that are coming. And, offshore wind as a topic, this has been something which requires a lot of government support, a lot of support from the different kinds of institutions for, let's say, removing business hurdles in the way, easing out the approval processes, So we saw in the recent tender when the VGF was reduced, I guess this was for the Denmark, where the VGF was on the slightly lower side, and we suddenly saw, there's less interest, So there is still a lot of support required, and in the European countries, contracts for differences and VGF mechanisms, much higher VGF mechanisms, have been the key drivers, and I believe similar drivers would be needed for India and to create the complete supply chains in India. Yeah.
Right. Mr. Joshi, your organization has been, the early, supporters of offshore wind technology, and you yourself have been talking about this for a very long time. And you started talking about these tenders that have been, getting their bid submission dates have been extended so many times now. So how do you think, we can get the first projects to at least start, getting to that pre-construction or development stage? How do we, as a country or as an industry, how do we move this forward? Even with, people like NTPC and ONGC support, if those first projects are not coming, how do we get them off the ground?
See, as you talked about the potential, they say is around 175 gigawatt. And in Gujarat and Tamil Nadu itself, it is more than 70 gigawatt. Tenders have come in 3 different modes, mode A, B, C. So you need some encouragement in each aspect. For mode A, the VGF given is not sufficient. 4,000 crore for Gujarat, 500 megawatt is not going to be the kind of support which is required, because the wind speed in Gujarat, as you know, is less compared to Tamil Nadu. It is somewhere in the range of 7 meters per second. So the LCOE there comes somewhere in the range of 14 rupees. So we need to enhance the VGF in Gujarat case, and we come to mode B or mode C. In mode B, you need to have the offshore offtake guarantee for the wind power generated, because there you are not giving any VGF, there is no study available, and you have to arrange your customer yourself either through open access. So you need to have some offtake assurance there. And in third case, when you see the mode C, where you are asking a party or a developer to do the studies, then come out that this is a feasible solution, and then you ask him to participate in the tender, in an open tender. So that exclusivity is required in case of mode C. And in addition to this, we need to have a consistent policy, a long-term policy, which pushes this sector forward, because I see that in coming times, whenever green hydrogen will come, that time offshore wind will play a very, very important role. So we need to be ready for that. Cost is a prohibitive factor. We need to have a lot of concessions. I mean, when solar was there in the beginning, there were a lot of incentives given, whether it was accelerated depreciation or feed-in tariff or whatnot. So similar kind of incentives are required for this offshore wind. And as he rightly said, that everywhere in the world, whether today China is having more than 40 gigawatt, UK is having 16 gigawatt, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, they are having sufficient capacities. But everywhere the first action was taken by the government. So we need a very strong government support financially and from policy and regulatory point of view to push this standard forward. We have the capacity to do it, but these are the factors, as you rightly said, when solar is available to me at 2.5 and wind at 3.75, why should I go for a offshore supply somewhere in the range of 11 to 12 rupees per unit? Nobody is going to take it. So we need that bridging of the gap so that it comes at par with at least the APPC of a particular state. Where generally, as on date, if you see, we are expecting that by 2030, 32, the APPC will be somewhere in the range of 5 to 6 rupees. So by that time, we have to reduce the cost so that it competes with that. So these are certain actions which are required to propel this particular segment.
Right. Talking about what's happening globally also in the offshore wind space, we've seen in markets like the US, for instance, because of the change in regulations, projects being cancelled or facing a lot of backlash, and some other countries also where investors are now sort of backing out of their commitments. So, what is the general sentiment regarding offshore wind, and why are some of these issues coming up globally as well? Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I can give it a try. It's my guess is that it's because it's a very capex heavy industry. So it's very specialized. There are not that many OEMs that can actually produce this. There's a shortage of installation ships and so on that have a long lead time in production and so on. So it's just we've hit into a perfect storm here with tariffs and inflation in the last few years and so on, that has just made it very hard for offshore wind, and especially also with the cost of solar and so on going down. Then the alternatives are just getting cheaper and cheaper. So what is the benefit of offshore wind, right? That's what we have to look into, and we heard from the speakers yesterday as well that that the benefit of offshore wind is this, the CUF is much higher, right? It's equivalent to a base load production kind of thing. So you can get those round the clock production, and which helps with a more stable grid, and overall will help reduce cost of running the grid and so on. So I think we, as a government, you need to kind of look into the full perspective and not on a project basis here, because then offshore wind will just look very expensive compared to the alternatives. Yeah.
Right. Kuldeep, would you like to comment on the global disruptions being seen, especially in the offshore wind space, with projects like Equinor's massive projects being sort of put on the back burner, and even early projects in some economies like Vietnam, etc., investors pulling out. What is your take on that?
In regards to the policy framework, the socio-economic issues have to be considered. This could be one big parameter. Vietnamese market I have not been following up, so I won't be able to comment on that. But yes, socio-economic issues is also something which has been one of the key factors derailing the projects. Yeah.
Right. Coming to supply chain concerns, which I think everyone sort of talks about, and I think we were discussing yesterday also, where we had CTU talking about from a transmission angle how submarine cables, there's a huge problem there with the supply chain. So in light of all that, what can India start doing early on to have sufficient supply chains for offshore wind particularly? Mr. Joshi, would you like to just take that up?
See, we have to develop the supply chain. Today, if we talk about it, right now, if I want to install offshore wind, then I have to import my machines. We need to gradually indigenize the production of certain elements like towers or other things. And we need to have assured supply of offshore vessels which are going to be used for this installation. As if you see the scenario across the globe, the kind of vessels we require are booked up to 2030. So we have to take action so that by the time we expect that in India by 2030 or 2032, maybe not 2030, it will be 2032, the first few gigawatts will come. So we need to have that arrangement, long-term arrangement for those vessels which are required for installation of such huge machines which are having 140-meter height or maybe 220-meter blade. I mean, the machines which are going to be there will be of rating maybe around 15 megawatt each. So those vessels are required. And third aspect is that you need to have port facilities, proper port facilities, because even for installation and then later on for maintenance, we need to have good ports from where vessels can be sent to the machines, or at the time of installation, we have to put our machines there, then send it to the offshore wherever it is required. So these are certain things which are, government is doing, the certain fund has been allocated for port upgradation also out of that 7,000 plus crore VGF. But that quantum is very less. Somehow I feel that that push is missing, now. So we have to, if you see, when we are talking about the other economies, US, they have a lot of oil and gas, so they are least bothered whether renewable energy. Their energy demands are met, so they are ready to burn gas or oil and then carbon capture it and get clean energy. Europe, yes, definitely, they are giving a push to offshore wind. Some of the countries are now 100% on offshore wind. So that kind of thought with a strong push by government and participation by leaders like ONGC or NTPC can make it possible. But these aspects of the supply chain need to be pushed up or brought to the level where they can contribute for smooth execution of the projects.
So you mentioned that these offshore wind vessels, these offshore vessels are booked till 2030.
Yes,
so, we can assume that till 2030.
Globally, there is a slight pullback during last year, but otherwise, if you say, the plan for the offshore wind is very huge. Today, they say it will go up to, if Britain wants to have 50 gigawatt by 2030, other economies, and they are on their plans, not like US, where offshore wind projects or any other projects, maybe green hydrogen, etc., which has taken a backseat. So these vessels, because we in ONGC up to 3,500 tons vessels are required for our own installation. Here the vessels which you will require will be more than maybe somewhere in the range of 5,000 tons. They are very limited. And the order book is such that you need to have a proper planning that in the future, this much capacity will come, then next phase, this will come. Only then we can arrange those vessels. So that point, the policy and the line of action, this will be the trajectory, how I will move from 2 gigawatt to 37 gigawatt. That should be very well defined. Only then people can do something.
Right.
Maybe I can add to that, because that's also what we've seen in Europe, especially like the government really needs to address that this is the plan, right? The EU has made some bold statements about putting up possibly 300 gigawatts in the Northern Sea and so on. So that enables the local TSOs, for example, we talked about yesterday that TenneT has made a framework agreement in delivery of 15 of these HVDC substations. And they are only able to do that because they can see the pipeline. They know it's coming, right? So they are willing to take this risk because there is there will always be a risk of this not happening, but the risk will be minuscule if you can see a large backing from the government and so on, and saying yes, this will happen in some capacity. So that's also what's needed in India, right? A clear guideline, way forward that will actually allow some of these production facilities and supply chain things to say, yeah, we are going to invest in India and put up production here, so we can help reach the goal from the government. Yeah.
Right. Kuldeep, what about the turbines themselves? I mean, obviously India is currently not manufacturing. We'll have to import, right? So what about that aspect itself? I mean, how?
Yeah, so basically this is a supply chain issue. The OEMs that we have in India, I mean, they are manufacturing machines which are 2 to 3 megawatts, and offshore wind requires, somewhere in the range 6 megawatts and above, So these machines at the moment, let's say even for 2032 and beyond, if we are seeing installations, these machines will have to be imported. Now coming to the shortcomings on the supply chains, not just for the offshore wind, but also in the onshore wind, So GVAC has been, doing the market research, and as per the recent report, even the capacities that we have for the onshore wind, the OEM capacities, they are not going to be enough. Even there is the shortage. So Government of India has to think about it, how to further boost the capacities for the onshore wind, and on top, we still have time, so we can look into, how the offshore wind production can be started in India. It has to start first with the research and development, and then maybe a PLI-like arrangement, that is there in several sectors, including solar and batteries and others. So a similar scheme can be brought up by Government of India. But as Jesper was just saying, it has to have a very long-term horizon, and clear policy and scheme from the beginning. So, and also, coming back to the point which Sir was making regarding the vessels, offshore wind installation requires 7 to 8 different types of vessels, and in India we may have 3 or 4 types of those vessels, but for the rest, it has to be booked now. And the offshore wind suppliers, developers, their order books are simply full until 2030. So the economic viability is a question, but then even on top of that, they are not looking at India as a potential market because they are just too full at the moment.
Right. Right. Mr. Joshi, from a local perspective, we spoke about supply chain issues, we spoke about vessel shortage and all of those things, but even from a bureaucracy perspective, or even from, the kind of local issues that crop up, even in onshore wind project, for instance, where, we don't have right of way, we don't have land acquisition in time. Obviously, that's not the case there. But what kind of issues do you expect will crop up when the first projects sort of are ready to be finally constructed? From maybe a fisheries angle, from a defense angle, I don't know, all those kinds of issues.
See, up to 200 nautical miles, we can have projects in that zone. But definitely when we talk about Tamil Nadu, when you go on field or on ground, the fishermen's problem itself is a very big problem. And we need to have the central and state government aligned for a particular projects. If central government is giving CFA or VGF, then we need to have some incentives from the state governments also. Because only then, and not only incentives, but also the assurance that power will be taken by them. Only then these will come. Tamil Nadu, I say, is a very promising. I mean, the wind speeds are like European wind speeds. Machines, regular wind machines can be used, installed there, not customized. For Gujarat, you need to have customization. But in Tamil Nadu, definitely it is going to be there. And then the benefits like ISTS, these are required. Then you need to have some support through RECs or carbon credits, which will make these projects viable. So these are the actions which are required from government side. See, government is doing a lot, there is no doubt about it. But problem is, nothing is becoming fruitful. Because crux is high cost. And for that, we need to have all sort of incentives and support. Only then this will be viable. And once we achieve economy of scale, things will be regular like any other area, whether solar or wind. So that's my view on that.
Right. Jesper, yesterday we were also discussing about the different kind of technologies, for instance, floating offshore and near shore and offshore. So, and I think we saw a presentation yesterday where there was also some discussion on near shore. And I believe you said you would like to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so nearshore is definitely a large potential as well in India. But I think yesterday it said like it could be a stepping stone for offshore wind, and then I'm a bit skeptical about that. So I don't want like the states and the central to kind of like see that as a as a way forward to help develop offshore wind, because it's vastly different technologies. Like nearshore is much more similar to onshore, basically. The vessels are different, and like the entire equipment and so on. So I would strongly urge not to kind of do some similarities between them, because then you are like putting the incentives in the wrong place, in my opinion, where. Yeah, offshore is, you have to see it as a separate technology. You need proper port structure and the infrastructure in order to do that. So yeah, that was like just a bit of a heads up, yeah.
Right, Mr. Joshi.
One more point is that if you see the clearances required,
Right.
there is a very big list. And if an individual developer goes to so many ministries, then it will never be possible to get that clearance. So we need to have a single point clearance authority. MNR is the nodal ministry, NIVE is the nodal agency, but all clearances should be arranged at one point. Because we have seen even for our offshore works, getting MOD clearance or foreign ministry clearances, it's a huge job. So that comfort the developer should get, that I am putting my application and within so many days, every clearance will come to me in one shot. So that is a must which is required.
So maybe with the kind of expertise that ONGC has, maybe you will be the first ones to develop the offshore wind project in India.
Yeah, I think that's also one of the things that we highly advocate from the Danish Energy Agency. Like in Denmark, that has been created as what we call one-stop shop. So for everything offshore, like all the applications and permissions are being handled by the Danish Energy Agency, so the developers only need to contact them. Right. They will help with facilitating. So there are environmental ministries and so on that has to give permissions and so on, but it's handled by the Danish Energy Agency instead of the developers. So we try to reduce the level of complexity. Because I also heard yesterday that like in India for an onshore project, like more than 2,000 permissions has to be granted. So it is a very complex scheme and so on. So anything we can do to help that would definitely move the way forward a lot. And that's also what we hope to do at the Center of Excellence, to kind of see what is it that's like one-way entrant for the developers to look into information about offshore wind in India.
Right. Yes, Kuldeep, you wanted to add something?
Just add to that. Similar experience also in Germany. Earlier it used to take 5 to 6 years, but they've reduced it down to less than 2 years. So that's quite a significant time reduction in terms of giving all the clearances, and it's a one-stop shop now. So, yeah.
Right. Jesper, we've spoken about different things that obviously, some markets in Europe have done, which have helped bring the first projects. We've spoken about transmission, we've spoken about early grants and subsidies and capital incentives, etc. What about the, early contracting arrangements or the offtake arrangements or the auctions that happened early on, which sort of gave a boost? So what learnings can, the Indian policymakers take from those early projects?
Yeah, we've done offshore wind in Denmark for many years now, and it's been a long journey in order to end where we are at now. And like as 10 years back in 2015, like where the first like larger offshore wind project was auctioned out, we saw a strike price of around 11-12 rupees per megawatt. So a similar case as we have here in India now, right? And for the latest tender that I just finished before I moved to Delhi, we estimating like around 4.5 rupees per megawatt. And that's with the same conditions as we see in Tamil Nadu, for example. So I believe that it should be possible to get down to those levels. And the way it's been done is basically by trial and error, in a sense. The initial like projects we've looked into how is it the best way we can mitigate risk, and in Europe it's not as much on the capex because the financing is pretty favorable. So the risk for developers there are mainly on the offtake. PPAs in Denmark is reverse as in India, where like maybe 5 to 10% of the energy production is based on PPAs. Rest is going straight to the market. So the risk is basically there. So what we've always done is look into CFDs basically, or a fixed price for the developers. And where we started as one-sided to kind of give them the full upside of the offtake, we've now come into a more of a two-sided CFD where we share the risk instead, and that also it helps at least with the Danish Finance Ministry, who has to fund this, to kind of say that okay, we can actually also earn a bit of money on this potentially, because as much as the information as the Danish Energy has on offshore wind, we will never know the business case. Right. So it's from the government side, it's also good to give a bit of flexibility on each side. So I think it's just a matter of listening to what the developers say, what the markets say, and like how do we share the risk most efficiently.
Right. Kuldeep, anything that you would like to add to that regarding offtake, contracting, auction mechanisms? What can work for India based on whatever we've seen in Germany or other markets?
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of the first few gigawatts, as we just discussed, and also as I was just saying, in terms of different models A, B, and C, what kind of mechanism is needed to make it happen. Basically, the whole proposition has to be de-risked, yeah, and the VGF has to be increased, and then hopefully, we can also achieve similar economies of scale as Denmark and the other European countries have achieved. So much more strong backup is needed from the government side. Yeah.
Right. Mr. Joshi, your thoughts on contracting and offtake and auctions, etc.
See, wind is a totally different ballgame. It's not solar. Even if you see the onshore wind, today in solar we have more than 120 gigawatt capacity and wind has just crossed 50. Because you go for TBCB, it's going to be a failure. You need to have FIT, FIP, or that other government arrangements which are there in Europe. And once the market matures, then we can go towards other arrangements like corporate PPAs or PPAs. But initially, the feed-in tariff or the preferential tariff should be the way that a developer is going to get this much significantly attractive tariff, then only he will. And other thing is that there are various sectors or industries which are most suitable candidate for offshore, being a consistent energy, high CUF and availability during non-solar hours. We have to pursue those industries or give them some incentives, whether it is steel or fertilizers, or many other where some what we call the hard to abate sectors. There is a very good scope for offshore wind, but then again, government has to play a role. They have to give them some incentives to go for that. Maybe issues like CBAM will force them to go for it, but we need a proper support and proper, say, canvassing by government to ensure that these particular industries, they have a tilt towards offshore wind. That is required.
Right. So you said FITs. Has there been any discussion anywhere about FITs for offshore wind in India?
See, not in India. I mean, the problem is in Europe, it started with FITs. And still FIT is there in some of the countries. But here, see, when we did our first onshore project, it was at 5.31, it was a preferential tariff.
Right.
And now, the lull in the wind, onshore wind came because of the
Switch in the regime.
competitive bidding. Because the cost involved is so high, once you bid for it, so emotionally sometimes you go to a certain low level that projects don't become viable. बहुत सारे project award हुए, then after that, nothing was done. So we don't want to repeat that mistake in offshore. That is why we are saying that you should have all incentives like feed-in tariff, FIPs, or that contracting arrangement which British government uses.
CFDs.
See, so that kind of support is required.
So have you in your interactions also, proposed the kind of incentives that wind industry used to get earlier, like generation-based incentives or accelerated depreciation, all of those things have there been
That is, earlier also I said, whatever solar in its nascent stage got, or any RE project got it, that has to be given here, not only for offshore wind, whether it is green hydrogen, offshore wind or CCUS, which are highly cost intensive and emerging technologies. Offshore wind is a mature technology, but for India it is sort of an emerging technology. So there you need these kind of support. GBI, accelerated depreciation, waivers for whatever possible which are being given, ISTS or others, and some incentive from the state government also. Then only it will be viable.
Right. On that note, I'm going to go to the audience for some questions or comments. Any questions or comments on the right? Yes. Can you please get the mic to him? So please introduce yourself and let us know the panelists you will be addressing the question to.
Hi, I am Dhanaji Patil. I am from Vortex. We deal in wind data. So my question is to all panelists actually. So I would like to have their views about the carbon emissions, because if we are saying the offshore is 3 times capex intensive, does that mean that it is giving 3 times higher emissions?
Okay. Jesper?
Yeah, of course there's more steel in it and like materials, so it will be more carbon intensive than onshore and solar and so on. I don't know if per megawatt it will like how it will be. I must admit, but over like in Denmark and so on, and Europe, there's been studies that like I think it only takes around 1 or 2 years for an offshore turbine to kind of have like offset the carbon emission from to whatever it's replacing basically. So I don't think there should be any like issues in that regard.
Yeah. Do you have another question?
Yeah, just in continuation, actually, I mean, when there, for the country like India, maybe for Australia, where there is a lot of land potential is still available, in that case, really all these countries should go for offshore development, or, I mean, people here might be angry on me because we are already lagging on the development. We are very slow for the offshore development. But still, what are your views actually, the views from the all panelists for
do you
the
mean since so much land is available, why do we need to go for offshore?
Land and the potential is available. In that case, really we should go for this type of developments.
Thank you. Thank you.
See, it's a myth that land is available. As a developer, you go in the market, and for solar, availability of land is a very big question. And connectivity is another problem. There is no connectivity available by 28, 29. And once you get connectivity, you need to have land around it. So the land prices are now going up. Availability of land is, I mean, on paper you say that this much square kilometers are available. But getting into it at a right place where solar insolation is high is another issue. The offshore wind solves that problem of land. So that way it is advantageous.
And I also think that,
Yep.
like, yeah, my specialty is Denmark, and there we could technically also cover all our the energy demand by solar and onshore if we plaster the country with those. But eventually you reach like a saturation point from the local citizens, because I don't know what you prefer to look at, a forest or a big field of solar panels, right? So eventually you reach a place where we need to put it somewhere where people won't complain as much, which is offshore. Because of course there will be fishermen and so on where conflicts are rising and so on, but it is still only a limited amount of space of the ocean that you kind of reserved for offshore wind. So there's still plenty of space for fisheries and whatnot.
And
Yes, sir.
one more point is that the demand of energy in India, going towards a developed economy, is so huge that you require all sources of energy. It is around, the total requirement is around 1,000 million metric tons of oil and oil equivalent. Out of that, I mean, we are importing almost 90% of oil, then 50% of gas. So every energy element has a very, very special role. European countries or American countries, when they were developing, they did a lot of emissions. Now they say, why you are doing emissions here? Because, no, we are growing, we need to have it. So don't bother about those emissions. For a growing economy like us, we need all sources. And there is ample scope for each and every renewable element, whether it is solar, wind, offshore wind, or anything, green hydrogen. These are very badly required for our growth. पहले तो मुझे सर्वाइवल देखना है, ग्रोथ देखनी है, उसके बाद देन आई विल सी. वे लोगों ने 24 साल मतलब ईयर्स बैक दे हैड लॉट ऑफ इमिशंस, उनका किया हुआ गंद मैं साफ कर रहा हूँ. वो दैट एंगल शुड नॉट कम. I mean, I'm very blunt about it, that our growing economy needs so much of energy that I need to have all elements in my energy mix. So offshore wind can definitely be an important player, considering the future aspects of green hydrogen and their utilization in the hard-to-abate sectors.
Right. Yes, you have a question.
Yeah, good morning. It was a very nice panel discussion indeed. My question to Mr. Joshi, you talked about certain challenges like requirement of vessels, ports, and then you also spoke about government incentive push. In India, where we have more than 7,500 kilometer coastal line, and of course we have a fantastic natural as well as artificial ports. So don't you think being in a ONGC, we should form a council like, let's say, Wind Power of India or Wind Power Council of India, so that we can have direct connection with government, to all of these challenges can overcome?
Already there are association in India, Wind Power Association is there. They are taking up the issues or the problems which are being faced by wind industry with the concerned ministry, especially MNRE and other ministries. So for offshore wind, the idea is very good, but I should have something on the plate first. Then I'll say, I want to grow this or I want to do this. So for onshore, it is already there. WIPP is there and it is playing a very, very active role regarding all issues and problems in the wind sector. Offshore wind will be a component of that only.
Right, right. Any other questions? I'll go to the left. Yes. I see two raised hands. Can you please hand them the mics quickly?
Hello. My name is Gaurav and I'm from Siemens. I just want a clarity on a certain statement that you made. you talked about some cases in Denmark wherein the power
Can
was...
you be a little louder,
Yeah.
please?
Is it better now?
Yeah, yeah.
So I just want a clarity on a statement that you made that before you came here, you were talking about some projects that got opened up in Denmark, wherein you observed that the per unit power has moved from an Indian equivalent of 11 to 12 rupees per megawatt to 4.5. We just want to hear something more on that.
That's that's also, I think, that the turbines back then was like maybe 6 megawatts or 5 or something like that. So there's been a huge development in size and efficiency, of course. So that's also part of why the LCOE has dropped significantly for the European countries, and that's why I also think like India doesn't need to wait 10 years for the LCOE to drop rather fast, because the technology development has already happened in a sense. So here the issues are more like on the logistics, so ports and infrastructure, and like the permitting, like I don't want to say chaos, but like at least that it's uncertain what you actually have to do in order to get an offshore wind farm like approved. So the development in technology has happened based on like, because again governments has in all over the world has like made clear statement that okay, we need offshore wind, and then there was kind of a race to make the largest turbines, because that's what the developers wanted. Like they needed to utilize as much of the seabed area as possible, basically. And yeah, that's how I see why it has happened. We are nearing a saturation. I don't like, there are some bigger turbines coming and so on, but we won't see those big leaps as we've seen in the last 10, 15 years. Yeah.
So is it that we can see that if there's a learning cycle that Europe has learned, say for the past 20 years, to move from say 11 rupees to 4.5, when we come down to the India case, do we see that learning cycle to be vastly compressed, and maybe, the first project itself, we are not seeing at 11 and 12 rupees, then we are seeing something at lower pricing? Subject to, yes, we can have some government subsidies as you talked about, Mr. Nupur.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Can we take that? Yeah.
Hi.
That will be the last
Yeah,
question.
hello.
Sorry.
I'm Kiran Kumar, so I'm leading CNI business vertical in O2 Power. So my questions are like, what is the CEF which we can expect in offshore wind? Typically in onshore we see around 30 to 35% of CEF. So what is the maximum CEF which we can expect in offshore wind? Are there any technical possibilities to further enhance the CEF so that the LCOE can brought down? So just want to get more insights on that.
Thank you. On CUF, yes.
As far as onshore is concerned, CUF up to 35% is there. Offshore depends on the wind speed. In Gujarat, it is somewhere in the range of 33 to 35%. But in Tamil Nadu, it can be more than 50, depending on the machine you are using. If you are having the highest rating machine, say 15 megawatt, and hub height of 140 meters, then it will go beyond 50%, 55, 60%, up to that it is available, depending on the machine and the wind speed available in the zone where you are putting up your machine.
Right. Yeah, he has a quick question. Can I please go to him? And then if time permits, then I'll come back to you.
My name is Homesh from NAFED. I just wanted to understand what is the life of WTG in the offshore wind turbines compared to the onshore, and what are all the O&M operation and maintenance requirement for those, and what is the cost of it in comparison with the onshore?
The standard life is 25 years, right? And for O&M, yes, you need to have specialized services. You need to have vessels when there is a major repair, or otherwise you need choppers to go there. You cannot place people everywhere on the machines at a central base. From there, people can go by choppers and do the regular or routine maintenance. So the O&M itself is a challenging task, but Once you are into that, it becomes a routine. Like for us also in ONGC, we are going to offshore platforms every 14 days for a production and then for maintenance assets also. Vessels are required, not big capacity vessels, but vessels requirement is there.
Yeah, through some talks with the European developers at least, that we hear from them that they see a lifetime for offshore wind at like up to 40 years that they should. Right now, the contracts they have for the seabeds in Denmark and so on will be 30 plus a 5-year possible extension. But they say that, like, from what we hear from them, is that like 40 years should be no problem of maintaining them. Yeah.
Okay. We'll take that one last question from you and then end this panel.
So the LCOA cost which you have mentioned of 14 to 16 rupees is considering the COF of 50 to 60%, or can you throw some more light on that?
The cost for Gujarat is in that range, around 14 rupees. Cost for Tamil Nadu will be somewhere in the range of 11 to 12 rupees. Because COF in Tamil Nadu is more. It will be just touching 50%. In Gujarat, it is 33%. So that way, that difference is there.